ensuring properly funded hospice services, whether it's for adults or for children. And I thank again the organisers of this debate for bringing this matter to the House's attention, and I hope the Government's listening.
Paul Holmes.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and can I firstly congratulate my honourable friends, the member for Hastings and Rye, for starting the debate, and to my honourable friend, the member for Darlington, on their hard work in sponsoring this debate and for their work on the all-party group. Mr Deputy Speaker, I hosted a Westminster Hall debate on the 14th of June 2023, and I'm pleased that we're having this debate this evening, although disappointed that no further progress has been made on some of the problems that we expressed then compared to the problems that many honourable members are expressing this evening. The hospice sector, as has already been said, does a remarkable job and plays a pivotal role in our health system, providing care but also the support needed to those who watch their loved ones pass away and provide that wonderful care in those weeks up until that point. And that happened to me and many of my dear friends at the passing of my office manager, Sue Hall, on the 30th of March 2023. She passed away at the age of 57 from lymphoma, leaving her husband Jerry and her daughters Phoebe and Rosie. She was cared for by a Mountbatten hospice in my constituency, fabulously by the team, and the family and myself were able to count on the support of the fantastic staff at that hospice, who not only provided the best care that Sue wanted and needed and deserved, but also gave us the wraparound support during and after that period. And like many, Mountbatten provides 24/7 inpatient and community domiciliary care to Southampton and large parts of Hampshire. They support around 1,000 families every day, and demand for its services are expected to rise by 40% in the next 18 months. In essence, it costs £11.5 million to run every year, and of course relies on fundraising, which equates to about 70% of its total budget, and NHS contracting, which represents around 30% of services delivered. However, with the inadequate funding models in place and the ICB only giving a 2.4% uplift in the contracting of services, with a real rise in costs requiring an uplift of 8%, and in the year 25-26, the Hampshire ICB has once again said there will be no uplift, meaning Mountbatten will need to find an extra £750,000 to just provide the same services they do today.
On that point?
Of course.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. Strengthening our local hospices takes pressure off our NHS. We know that. The benefits of fairer funding are plain to see, and my honourable friend makes a very good point. Yet some hospices get no public funding at all from their local NHS. One such hospice is Sidmouth Hospice Care, a home in my constituency of East Devon. Dr Sarah Wollaston, formerly of this place, chair of the NHS Devon ICB, still needs to provide a detailed idea of what funding Sidmouth Hospice at Home can get. They don't receive a penny from NHS in Devon. That's wrong. Does my honourable friend agree that it cannot be right that some hospice services and charities get funding from these integrated care boards, something we should be proud of, while others get nothing at all?
Well, I thank my honourable friend. I absolutely agree with him. And, you know, in Hampshire, we're very lucky that Mountbatten has, as I say, 30% of its services contracted by the NHS. I think the ICB, which is in special measures, as my honourable friend for the Isle of Wight mentioned, are not doing a good enough job in providing those services. But absolutely, if a hospice wants to explore getting some of that funding from the National Health Service, then they should absolutely be allowed to do so, while also recognising that independence of spirit in many hospices who choose to go their own way. But absolutely, the honourable gentleman is quite right to raise the work of his hospice in his constituency, and I hope that they will be able to acquire some of that ICB funding going forward. But as I was saying, it will cost Mountbatten an extra £750,000 just to provide the same services, while the number of people they support will rise by 200%. And now I know that the Minister, when she gets on her feet, will say that this government awarded another £1.5 billion for hospice services through ICBs, and that is entirely welcome, and I congratulate her for her announcement on that in the debate that I led in last year. But I say now what I said in the last debate, and that is that the ICBs are not passing on the money for the purposes that they were set out for. And quite frankly, ICBs, I believe, particularly mine in Hampshire, are running roughshod over the wishes of the government and are exacerbating a problem in a system that already fails to take into account the varying nature of needs across different parts of the country. I had a meeting with my honourable friend, the member for the Isle of Wight, last week with my ICB. I asked them for the details of how much of that £1.5 billion had been awarded to them, to Hampshire ICB. They could not give that answer. I then asked them how much of that was allocated to hospices in the region. They could not give that answer. So I say what I said to the Minister in June last year, that I do hope, she's doing an excellent job, and that money was very, very welcome, but I do hope that we look at a better way of holding these ICBs to account to make sure that when the government puts hard-pressed money into our health system, that they are delivering it to those frontline services that it was intended for. And that's no different in Hampshire, and I think that the leadership need to look very seriously at that, the leadership of Hampshire ICB. But Mountbatten also has to compete in an NHS workforce, and they choose to pay and award their staff quite rightly along the same pay guidelines as National Health Service staff. And this year they saw that as a 4.8% rise in costs and a further 5% next. And although, again, I thank the Minister that the government has awarded an extra £450,000 for Mountbatten, this will still leave a deficit of £1 million overall this year, but it's right that they choose to pay their staff adequately. And this will mean that Mountbatten will naturally have to lay off staff or some of its workforce, harming the outcomes for families in my constituency, but also the rest of the UK if hospices have this around the United Kingdom. And this funding instability, which I again in my local case solely blame at the ICB, who are leading a review into hospice care, seems entirely one-sided to me, while it will end up costing the NHS more money as beds are kept being used by people who should be in hospices, and hospitals pick up the burden of care. And we all know that the impact that energy bills and COVID had on this sector too. And so, although I really do not mean to sound depressing to the House this evening, I do believe that this issue is something that we have to continue to look at very strongly. And the government investment is extremely welcome, but we do need more. So I'd like to hear from the Minister in her winding up how she intends how the government and NHS nationally intend to work together to provide a sustainable long-term funding settlement for hospice care while retaining that independence that other honourable members have outlined. And we also need the Minister to review actually how much money is being passed on to hospices by ICBs, and to take a stronger line in reviewing the role of ICBs and holding them to account if they are not putting that money to the front line. There is a clear choice, and I just want to finish on this point, there is a clear choice for the government and for the hospice sector and for ICBs, and that is a sustainable funding model for our hospices, or more pressure on an already stretched National Health Service. Hospice staff I've met care and want to deliver on that challenge that many of our constituents face across the United Kingdom.